Warning: the images you are about to see in this video, some viewers might find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey guys, Rob here with McDojoLife, and the man you just got done watching become a 25-foot fireball was my original instructor, Master Lee Barden. Now, because most people don't watch until the end of videos, I want to go ahead and plug this now, but I wrote about this particular story and many others in a book I recently put out called Senseis, Bars, and Scars, written by myself and my homie Lewis Martin. You can pick up a copy of this on Amazon. All you gotta do is type in Senseis, Bars, and Scars and it'll pop up. You can grab one on digital and paperback today. But out of all those stories, let's talk about this one. That particular incident happened over 20 years ago, and since then I've seen it all over TV on things like Whacked Out Sports, World's Wildest, and even a show that popped on True TV one time. One thing that's always bothered me is all of those stories were so full of misinformation and things that just simply weren't true. I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone here. One, it would allow me to tell people about the book that I have where that story is included and many others, but two, would also allow me to clear some of the things up that were misinformation put out about that story. With that said, let's get started.
Looks like it's fight night at the mile marker 60 truck stop and event center.
Now, while I know that particular show that's from was just joking, it's a good opportunity to kind of clear this up. This actually happened inside a nightclub in the 5 Points area of Jacksonville, Florida called Club 5. Go figure. At the time, it was owned by a man named Bruce Chambers, who was doing something new in the Jacksonville area, something called patron boxing. This is something that would actually become extremely popular in nightclubs around the United States, where they would take a boxing ring, put it in the middle of the nightclub, and then have anyone sign up the night of to box. This is where my instructor comes in, Lee Barden. Lee would referee these fight nights at Club 5 along with his top student, Mike Nicholson. Halfway through the night, there'd be like an intermission, and during that intermission, we would actually perform martial arts demonstrations inside that boxing ring. I was about 14 years old at this time, and the only reason I was even allowed in the nightclub is because I would come in, help out with the martial arts demonstrations, and then leave. Lee was really well known for his skills with nunchucks, so of course, primarily the martial arts demonstrations we would do would be nunchuck demonstrations.
I started the martial arts when about 1973 when I saw Bruce Lee up on the big silver screen. It just impressed me so much. I just wanted to be the best there was.
We would set up these giant black lights in the corners of the ring, and the nunchucks themselves were usually covered in black light reflective tape, black light reflective streamers. We do glow sticks, pretty similar to what you would see at like a normal rave nowadays. Every once in a while we would use things like sparklers, and of course the big one that people always loved, fire.
I started using fire in my martial art act about 4 or 5 years ago. The problem with fire on nunchucks is once you get rolling, you can't stop.
Soon after Lee started doing the fire nunchucks, he actually did discover how to make them stop while you were swinging them. He discovered this at a martial arts tournament called the US Open, which they still currently televise on ESPN. He didn't tell any of the judges he was going to do this because he was worried the judges would probably stop him, which most likely they would, but he signed up for the weapons division and he set the nunchucks on fire and just started going. During that competition, not knowing how to stop the nunchucks, he actually did something we now call the Statue of Liberty pose when we're doing the nunchucks on fire, and he put them together and held them up over his head, and it kind of looks like the Statue of Liberty pose. Around this time, we were actually traveling a lot of different martial arts tournaments and just doing martial arts demonstrations. We were trying to figure out like different ways to kind of keep it fun, exciting, or different. So one of the tournaments was at the Battle of Atlanta, and we actually did like a Harlem Globetrotters demonstration. Another one we did was dueling banjos, and we did that at the Miami Open. But every time we do something like this, we were always looking to do something bigger and better.
That night, we were trying something different. We were going with a theme. So we decided the devil went down to Georgia. I thought, what a great idea to put my fire chucks in a pan. My assistant was going to light the chucks, and I was going to pull them out and start the routine.
We had practiced this routine over and over and over again, but we never practiced it with the painter's pan full of liquid. Some stories called it kerosene.
When Lee pulls the nunchucks from the pan, the tray of flaming kerosene spills. His assistant tries to move the pan away from the audience, but accidentally kicks a gallon of blistering lighter fluid onto Lee's back.
It wasn't kerosene at all, it was actually Coleman's lantern fluid. And that might not sound important unless you've actually ever performed with fire. You see, not all flammable liquids are created equal. Some burn hotter, some burn quicker, some burn longer, some have way too much smoke. Some are just super toxic and you wouldn't want to perform with them at all. But the standard a lot of people use, and what we use, is something called Coleman's lantern fluid, and it burns a little longer and it doesn't really have a lot of smoke. But we continue.
Lee's new assistant soaked the nunchucks with far too much lighter fluid.
This is another one of those statements that just was completely incorrect. This person was not new at all. I actually mentioned this person earlier in the video. It's actually Mike Nicholson, and he was Sensei Lee's #1 student. Now, while Mike was a huge asshole, I wouldn't wish this upon anybody because Mike never really forgave himself for this incident.
His assistant tries to move the pan away from the audience.
And yet again, another false statement. When Lee had pulled the nunchucks out of the pan, some of the liquid got on the ring. And Mike wasn't trying to move the pan, Mike was actually trying to sweep a little bit of the flame out with his foot, and when he did, he accidentally kicked the painter's pan and it flew into the air and got all over Lee. One thing that I think is important to take note here is that almost all that liquid got on Lee. Now some spattered here and there, but the majority got on Lee. If it didn't, that means that almost all of that would have probably hit the audience right behind Lee. I was standing ringside when this happened, when I saw Lee ignite in a giant fireball. My mentor, he ran, jumped over the top ring rope, which is extremely impressive, and landed on the concrete right in front of me. It was a terrifying thing for me as a 14-year-old kid to see my mentor set on fire and then rolling around on the floor in flames in front of me. I thought he was gonna die, and I will never forget the smell of a body being burned.
I knew something was wrong at that point. This is going to be tough to contain. But I was thinking, am I on fire? Oh my God, I'm on fire. And there was so much fire in my face I couldn't see.
I had turned around to talk to a friend of mine and heard everybody screaming. There was a lot of fire in the ring. And at first I thought, well, could this be part of the show? Because Lee had told me earlier in the night that they were going to have a different fire show. And I saw someone in the fire. I realized it wasn't part of the show.
I saw him turn around trying to find a way out, and I kept yelling, drop and roll, drop and roll. But then I realized there was no place to drop and roll because the whole ring was on fire.
Once he jumped over the ropes and hit the table and hit the ground, I was over there with the t-shirts trying to get the fire off him.
He drops, he starts spinning and rolling on the ground, his leg won't go out. Somebody comes down with some bottled water. I grabbed the bottled water and squirt the bottled water on his leg. But when I did that, it was like a light bulb going off to everybody else, and water started coming from everywhere.
One thing that surprised me though was out of all the stories that actually made it onto television, one never made it to television. Now just a second ago you saw one of the paramedics speak about this incident, but there was actually a second paramedic on site. There were always two there for every fight night. While Lee was on fire and he's rolling around on the floor and everyone's trying to put him out, they get him mostly out. And a guy behind us who was there with his drink in his hand tossed it onto Lee thinking that he would help put Lee out. Apparently whatever he was drinking was extremely strong and actually lit Lee's leg back on fire. That second paramedic I was telling you about was really close friends with Lee at the time, turned around and knee-jerk reaction punched that guy right in the face. The guy was immediately apologetic. He was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I thought I was helping out. Everyone's freaking out and we all think Lee's gonna die. There's quite a few of us from the martial arts school there who were helping with the demonstration. Mike, of course, is blaming himself for the entire thing, even though it was an accident. And of course, his wife was there as well.
30 to 40% of my body had second and third degree burns. A lot of the skin on my ears had burned off and left exposed cartilage.
Most of the skin on his face was gone. His hands, they were really bad. One of my first thoughts was that he would never use his hands again.
My left leg was probably the worst of it all. The whole thigh, the calf, around my knee, on the front part of my thigh, a lot of scarring there. I'm just thankful that my face didn't look like my leg. Don't take fire for granted. We started treating it like a toy. But if you play with fire, you're going to get burned. What frightened me the most was leaving a 6-month-old baby and my 5-year-old daughter and my wife. I'm probably one of the luckiest people in the world.
This is just one of many, many, many stories that is in my book, Senseis, Bars, and Scars. I dedicated this book to Lee, who passed away a few years ago from cancer. I also dedicated this book to my mom, who allowed me to do a lot when I was younger, and if it wasn't for her allowing me to pursue my passion in martial arts, I wouldn't be able to do a career and a job that I love tremendously. There are stories in there about 2-on-2 fights that I had inside the nightclub bar. There are stories about boxing matches I had in there. There are stories about tournaments that I went through, scars that I have. All kinds of things are in this book. Even me having to disarm someone who had a knife and was trying to attack me with it. You can pick this book up digital and paperback on Amazon.com. And currently, it's the #1 book in a couple categories. This brings us to the question of the day, brought to you by xmarshall.com. Be sure to answer the question of the day in the comment sections below, so that way you could be entered for a chance to win a $100 gift voucher to use at xmarshall.com. What is a crazy martial arts story that you have? It could be something that happened in the dojo. It could be something that happened in your private life. It could be something that happened in the ring at a tournament. It doesn't matter. I want to hear your crazy martial arts stories. As always, I look forward to reading those in the comment sections below, so that way I know that you watched the entire video. Thank you all for the likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, and memberships. Keep the martial arts legit.
My baby got robbed the other day by degenerates. So she wanted to learn some new form of this self-defense. So she did her research and perused it online and found this tool said he could move shit with his mind. He called himself Seafood Paul Zimmerman. He got a dojo with a strip mall near Cinnabon. Now she spends all day trying to break boards with her thoughts, but the only thing she's breaking is my little heart. Things just savage.